You're looking to become a better player in NHL 25, and I guarantee by the end of this video, you will be. We're gonna go through every tip I have on settings, the way to construct your lineup, offensive and defensive strategies, as well as how to use them. So let's start with your overall settings. Let's start first with the most important setting, and that is going to be your camera angle. There are really only two. The first would be overhead. Now, the overhead camera angle has been a staple for the last 15 years. It's going to give you that top-down view that almost resembles a whiteboard. The reason why it is so effective is because it has the most amount of vision when it comes to cycling and setting up plays in whatever zone you're in. There is very little crowd or clutter in this camera angle. It is just very, very simple, and for that reason, it is the most effective for the majority of the player base. Now, my personal favorite camera angle, if you don't like overhead, is zone. I've been using zone for about 5 or 6 years now, and the reason why I like the zone camera angle over overhead is simply because I can see other zones depending on where I am in the ice. For example, if you are in the offensive zone, you can see the neutral zone to see if someone's maybe gone for a line change or someone has gotten behind you out of a penalty box. You're able to just see that extra little bit of the ice to make sure that you can stop any of those breakaway breakouts. Same thing in the defensive zone. When you're breaking the puck out, you're able to see the neutral zone so you can see if there is a player streaking through the middle of the ice that you can hit to split the defense. Now, obviously, with the more zoomed out look, it isn't for everyone, and there is a lot of clutter because it does show an awful lot of the crowd. But again, I think once you get used to it, you will see the benefits help out a little bit more than what overhead can offer. What I'd recommend is if you don't like zone, try using overhead for a little while. But if you struggle with either, I would flip between the two. One of the first things I do whenever I'm going through a bit of a tilt is I just switch camera angles, and you'd be surprised what just a different look at the game will do when you're struggling. Now on to the controller settings. NHL 24 introduced the very controversial total control scheme, which was the biggest controller shakeup that we've had in years. Essentially, it allowed you to do one-button dekes with the face buttons, as well as the one-button Michigan. I'll be honest, if you're a seasoned vet of the franchise, any of skill stick, hybrid, or total control is completely viable. It is a total preference to you. There is no real advantage to any of them. I will say that I switch between total control and skill stick. I like the freedom that skill stick offers. It forces you to do dekes all manual. And then I'll be honest with you, when it comes to total control, there is nothing that you can't do with the total control scheme that you can with the skill stick. Obviously, the only big difference is that you're able to do the one-button Michigan. Everything else is relatively the same. I don't use any of the one-button dekes, and the Michigan is much more difficult to pull off in this year's game, even with the one-button total control scheme, but it is still an option for you. When it comes to auto backskate, you immediately want to turn this off, no matter how new to the franchise you are. When you are playing online, you want to be able to decide when your player turns around when defending the rush, because when the AI does it, you're more than likely going to get burned, and it's just going to be frustrating more often than not. And again, for anyone that doesn't know how to actually turn around manually, you just want to hold down L2 or the left trigger. That will activate vision control when you don't have the puck and will essentially turn your body to face the puck carrier. Shooting controls, you want to leave it camera relative. And then vibration, again, this is personal preference, but in my opinion, I think this game is sweaty enough. I don't need my controller feeling like a grenade in my hand. Leave that for FPS games. And lastly, for your skater settings, the online pass assist. Now, this is supposed to essentially keep your pass on track. So when you aim to a player with the higher online pass assist, the track is thinner, meaning that it will keep it close to the player you're passing to. When you lower it, it essentially makes that track wider, which should in turn make it a little bit more difficult, meaning you have to really aim when you are firing passes. What I've noticed in NHL 25 is that when you're in the offensive zone specifically, it's almost like online pass assist drops all the way to like 50 overall, and that's why you're missing those passes when you send it back to the point. Honestly, I've seen a ton of theories this year. I've seen people say that 75 is better than 100. This is all just a feel. I would mess around with it. Again, the lower should be far more difficult. I just leave mine at 100. When it comes to goalie settings, this is really not going to pertain to you if you're playing 1v1, obviously, but I would recommend turning tether off. It is meant for the extreme novice of the game. If you have tether turned on and you are in a shootout, things like that, it is going to be way more hindering for you than if you had it turned off. Again, if you are someone that's never picked up a controller and played NHL, tether might be somewhat useful for you, but turn that off. That'll do it for my recommendations for the settings in-game. Now let's move on to how to construct your lineup for NHL 25. So when it comes to NHL 25 and constructing your lineup, this year, more than ever, you want to have your players on their offhand. You You want to have your left-handed players on the right side and your right-handed players on the left side. The reason for this, if you are newer to the game, is so that they are always in a prime spot for a one-timer. No matter what, when you are cycling the zone, you want to be able to find your wingers on their offhand so they are set up for a one-timer. When it comes to defensemen, this is 100% necessary, especially in NHL 25. Having your defensemen on their offhand as well will allow them to always be in position for a one-timer, and that is really the main focus of NHL 25's gameplay. When it comes to special teams and how you should set that up, this is what I'd recommend. Do not mix and match your forward and defensive lines, because when you were sending out a power play unit, you were not sending out the total unit. You were choosing between your power play forwards and your power play defensemen. And why that is important is you don't want to finish off your power play, and let's say it's unsuccessful, and you've mixed your power play units, there is a chance that all of your lines are now at less than full strength. What I like to do is have my first line be my first power play forward unit, and then my second line be my second power play forward unit. The same thing goes on defense. If you start mixing pairs, once that power play is over, there is a strong chance that all of your defensive lines are now at reduced energy, and that could be a dangerous scenario for you. Now, the one caveat to this in NHL 25 is if you've got a player that has the one-timer ability. So let's say X Factor Elias Pettersson. I would recommend to throw him on the point. Again, the one-timer ability is very impactful in NHL 25, and having him at the point, as long as he is not on your first two lines, won't put you in too much of an issue once your power play is over in terms of energy, and it will give you that extra edge trying to score a one-timer from the point if it opens up. Other than that, I would make sure that my D pairings stay the exact same as they do in your regular lineup. The same thing goes for the penalty kill guys. What I would recommend is you make sure that you've got pairs from each line. So in my lineup, I've got Rod Brindamore as my number one center, paired with Connor McDavid on my penalty kill, Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes for my second line, and then my third line of Robert Thomas and Joe Sakic. Again, the reason for that is once the penalty kill is done, I will be able to have one of my top two lines be at full strength once that's done. Same situation is if my top two lines are tired, at least I know that my third unit will be at full strength. The same thing goes for your defense. Now, something I do like to do on my defense when it comes to my penalty kill is I swap my defensemen back to their strong side. So left-handers on the left side, right-handers on the right-hand side. And the reason for that is that they don't get caught in a situation, if I were to win the defensive zone draw, that they can't get a hard out around the boards, or they're stuck on their backhand, which can be a less accurate pass or shot out of the zone. Again, you're not looking for D-to-D one-timers when you're on the penalty kill, so there's no real benefit there when it comes to your defense on the kill. Your three-man PK, essentially the same idea. Your centerman is your centerman, again, your first three, and then your D-core, keep your D-pairs the exact same, so that you know for a fact, once it's over, you will have a D-pair that is at full strength. When it comes to three-man overtime, what I would recommend is have your best centerman be your centerman, but then after that, prioritize speed. It doesn't matter if you've got defensemen or forwards. I would recommend just having your fastest players out there, because with all that open ice, that's really what you're looking for. So forget about the position that they're in. Play a defenseman on the wing, play a forward on D. Whoever is the fastest, that's what I would recommend. And then lastly, when it comes to goaltenders, I promise you, they will not make or break how good you are at the game. What you get from this video about how to play a bit better defense, that's going to help you. Goaltenders, not so much. However, what I would recommend is to keep your goaltender above 6'4", and then have a look at their speed rating. It is the most important attribute for goaltenders. It dictates everything. It is a modifier stat for every other attribute, like glove high, stick high, all of that. And from what I've found so far in testing the fastest goaltenders that are the biggest, like Jacob Malik or Sebastian Casa, they appear to have the most effectiveness in-game. Again, not going to make or break how good you are, but they shouldn't let in as many floaters as some of these smaller, slower goaltenders. Now it's time to talk strategies. Let's begin with our offensive strategy. This is the basis of everything that you are going to do when you are cycling and creating plays in NHL 25. However, they still remain the exact same as they were back in 2004. I make this joke every year, but Mark Crawford walking you through the overload, crash the net, and behind that is still one of the funnier things to me. Legitimately 2 decades. However, this year, because of the new reactive AI, they actually work quite well. And while they operate the exact same as they have in the past, in terms of where they go and what they're trying to do, now the AI will actually cycle and move and assist you while cycling the puck. In NHL 25, there is 2 that I would recommend. behind the net, and crash the net, which is a pretty big change because for the last few years, if you've been watching my videos, overload has been a very successful strategy for me, especially in NHL 23 when tip shots were just so prevalent. Overload is still the best when it comes to tip shots, but those just aren't the kind of go-to goals you're looking for when you're trying to cycle the puck in NHL 25. So this video, I'm going to walk you through everything that you want to look for when running behind the net. And then what I'll do is I will touch on when to switch to crash the net mid-game. Again, both are fantastic strategies, and at the higher end of the game, in terms of Division 1, Division 2, crash the net might be a little bit more successful for you. But like I've said for years now, when you get into Division 2, you're playing a completely different video game than what you play prior leading up to it, because you have to play more of the game and less hockey. So we'll walk through the settings I have, and then I'll show you how to use them. So behind the net is the offensive strategy. I would leave these for all four lines, especially when you are slowly learning how to use it. Another big issue is when a player gets stuck out on the ice, and that happens a ton this year. It can cause an issue where if you have a player from line 4 come out, it will try and override and use whatever line 4 strategy is, but it'll mess it up because the line 3 players are still on the ice. So all four lines, I would recommend using the same strategy. Next, for the first time ever, I actually believe the sliders might do something. Again, this might have something to do with the reactive AI, but here is what I set it up for. The carry and dump meter all the way to 10. And this is very important, probably the most important among these four. And what this will help with is when you are breaking the puck down the boards, left or right, that far side winger is going to carry his speed through the blue line. In prior games, they would just go offside an awful lot, but in NHL 25, it really doesn't happen, and it allows you to beat the defender and actually dump the puck into the zone, which is a welcome change to actually playing this game. Your cycle and shoot strategy, I would set this all the way to 10 as well. This is one I don't notice a ton in game, but the one benefit that I see is that they will kind of stay in the same spot and move left and right to try and get open when they're covered for a one-timer, as opposed to just constantly moving behind the net. And while you do want that, they will still do that with all the way to shoot. But again, one-timers are really the end-all be-all in NHL 25, and this will assist with that. Efficiency and energy. This one's tough because stamina matters so much in NHL 25. What I would recommend early on in the year is set this to 5, and you might even want to bring it down a few depending on how good your lineup is. I would not set this to 10 because early on in the game, you don't have enough players that have a high endurance rating, and they'll just run out of energy after one rush. So what I do is I set this to 5, and this is the kind of middle ground that I would look for with this. It still isn't great, but if you have a decent team, this is where I would set it. And then don't block. For the first time ever, I think, you actually want your players to block automatically. In prior games, they would go down on a knee and basically take them out of the play. But because, again, point shots are going to be the thing you see the most, or just one-timers in general, your AI will go into a crouch block, and that's a little bit different than just standing there. When you're manually blocking a shot from the point, I wouldn't always recommend going down into a crouch block by using L1. I would legitimately just stand there because they will still block the puck, and then you're in a much better spot to actually get the puck out of the zone. But your AI that you're not controlling, you want them to make sure that the shot doesn't get through, especially when you see the green beam light up. And again, you want to keep these for all four lines for continuity. You don't want half a line to come on, and then you're stuck with them trying to decide which one is which. So I would recommend that these all stay the exact same. Now onto your defense settings. What I would recommend is putting your defensive pairings, again, all of the exact same when it comes to sliders, to hold the line as opposed to pinch. As you'll see, my strategies are quite aggressive already. And when your defenseman will start to rush in to try and get a loose puck, it's how you give up 2-on-1s and breakaways very easily. And again, early on in the game, not a lot of us have the entire decor where they're just as fast as everyone else. So I would recommend you put this to hold the line so that you don't give up as many 2-on-1s and breakaways. Cycle shoot, again, name of the game is one-timers. So in NHL 25, you want your defenseman to stay at the point and not rush into the slot, which they have a tendency to do to help with the cycle when you've got it set to the cycle side of the slider. So for this, again, one-timers are what you're looking for at the point, or even just to create that kind of misdirection and using that as a threat so your opponent has to cover you. Again, you want them to set at shoot. That way they're in position for one-timers. And again, you want to keep this all the way through for all three pairings. Now on to our team strategies. And this year more than ever, I find myself changing them in game. And I'm going to talk in what situation do you want to change any of these offensive strategies mid-game. But this is what I recommend to start with. And these alone, I promise you, once you actually understand what you're supposed to be looking for, will have you jump up divisions very quickly. So my forecheck, I set this to 2-3. The main thing to remember about the forecheck when you have it set up like this is you don't want to be the one attacking the player with the puck. It is very easy for anyone with the puck to circle back and avoid your contact. But what you want to do is be the other forechecker and take away the first pass. Especially in the lower divisions, players more often than not won't even look at the first read, but once you get a little bit higher, they're only going to stare at that first read option. It's going to cause them to hesitate, and then your AI can bump them off the puck while you're covering the other pass. It's extremely aggressive, and especially when you get used to it, it's very, very effective. Next up is the neutral zone. I have this set to 1-2-2 red. Now, this is going to be, again, really aggressive, but once you figure out how to use it, I think you're going to find a lot of success with it. The way you want to use the 1-2-2 red is by switching to the closest player to the puck carrier. Now, when in the neutral zone, what'll happen is players will make passes through the neutral zone. You want to immediately player switch by hitting R2 and then making an attack on the puck. The 1-2-2 will create some layers, so you're always going to have a player near one of the opposing players and then receive the puck. The key thing with the 1-2-2 red is once you get beat, immediately player switch to either someone that is closer or someone further back so that you can assist with stopping them in the neutral zone. If you find yourself that this is just too aggressive for your opponent and you're getting beat down the boards an awful lot, you can switch to the 1-4. And again, the way that you want to play with the 1-4 is your 1 forward up front is going to be the attacker, and you want to leave this for your AI. And what you want to do is you take the defender at the blue line and you follow left and right so that they have to deal with your AI that is forechecking in the neutral zone, but also keep an eye on that defender that's just swimming behind the blue line, waiting to make their move. It's very difficult for players, again, in the lower divisions to have the vision to avoid the one centerman as well as that defender you're manually controlling. Trap and forecheck, again, this is going to depend on your team makeup. If you have a really slow team, things like that. I love being super aggressive because I think it causes a lot of turnovers in NHL 25. The intercepts, other than right in front of the net, are far more frequent in NHL 25. And with that, I want my players to be really aggressive. And again, this is all going to be based on player switching. But again, if you are getting smoked down the boards, giving up 2-on-1s, you want to change this all the way to trap, set this to the 1-4, and be a lot more patient when defending the rush. Next is your defensive pressure. This really hasn't changed from prior years, in my opinion. Protect net and contain puck are really the only ones I'd recommend. And the reason for that is because you want players near your net. Because again, you're going to find D-to-D one-timers are the most frequent offensive strategy and play that your opponent will go for, as they should, given the state of the game. And contain puck will keep players right in front of your net. Again, this is why it's important to set your don't block slider all the way to 10, because you want all your players in front of your net ready to get down and get smoked with a puck. Onto your defensive strategy, and man, welcome back, Tight Point. It's been years, but until you get into those higher divisions, Tight Point will cause so much havoc and set you up for breakaways more than any other strategy. What you want to do with Tight Point is when someone is outside working around the perimeter and you can see that D-to-D one-timer light up, you want to manually select your far side winger, and you want to just staple him right to that far side defenseman set up for a one-timer. This is going to require patience and a little bit of practice when it comes to player switching, but the amount of breakaways I've had in NHL 25 by just standing there staring at the guy intercepting a pass is crazy. You will find players that will, no matter who's covered, try and get a D-to-D one-timer through every single offensive zone play, and Tight Point, in my opinion, allows you to have those wingers up high so that when you switch to them, you don't have to have a long stretch of ice to get in the middle of the pass. Now, finally, onto your offensive pressure. Again, this is going to depend on your team and how the game is going. I like full-out attack. Offensive pressure will dictate how often your defensemen and players will kind of get going through the neutral zone. So if you have this set to defend lead and you're carrying the puck, don't expect your wingers or your defensemen to kind of stay with you through the rush. When you've got full out attack, it is dangerous because if you lose it or turn the puck over the neutral zone, it's going to be a breakaway or 2-on-1 against. But again, that is going to be dependent on who you're playing. I like full out attack because you just get everything going up ice. The controlled breakout. I like the strong side slant this year again. It is just the simplest. Now, breakouts are extremely important, and it is what a lot of players in lower divisions struggle with. But how you use the strong side slant would be start the play down below your net. And once you see the player on the right or left side, depending on what side you're going to, break the puck out along the boards. What strong side slant will allow is it will give you an option where you are essentially going to 2-on-1 the player that's forechecking you. So once that player makes a move and either covers your center in the middle of the ice or your winger up the boards, you have two options and you are going to be able to make the play to at least get the puck out of the zone. Again, this thing alone is going to help players that really don't have any strategy when playing. You're going to find that this is going to lead to a lot more breakouts and just getting the puck out and not turning it over and giving up a goal. Lastly, the quick breakout. I think for anyone that is not in a high division, close support is the most important. And the reason for that is, again, because the AI will intercept passes this year, and a lot of people are being aggressive on the forecheck, you need to have an option right when you get the puck behind the net. One of the biggest things that you are going to find and really kind of elevate your game with is to stop staring at the puck carrier. So when you would get the puck behind the net, before you get the puck, have an eye and look where your centerman is or your wingers are. There should be someone right in front of your goaltender. When you are using close support, as long as that isn't covered manually, you can fire that to that player, and then with that centerman in front of the net, you can go left or right depending on the boards and what you've got available to you. But that's the first read, and as long as you have one read, it's far better than none, and then you panicking and losing the puck. So I set it to close support. It's just the simplest. Now it's time to discuss how to score using all of these strategies. Why this is going to make you a better player is because you're no longer just reacting to the game. You are actually going to dictate and have an idea before the passes or shots are made, and that's going to improve your standing in rivals or hut champs more than anything. So if you've been playing a lot of NHL 25, obviously one-timers from the point have really become the main focus of offense. Now, while the player base gets a little bit more adjusted into how to actually defend them, you need to find some creative plays to set them up, and that's what I want to start with first. This first play, I want to highlight something that is going to be necessary to utilize all of these strategies, and that is dumping the puck hard around the boards when you enter the zone. With all of the settings that I have shown you, as long as your winger is skating forward and their defenseman has not turned around, you can send the puck hard around the boards, and you are going to win this race almost every single time. And this first play is one of the simplest that you can do when they are focused on chasing the puck behind the net on the pass. It'll open up that lane right to the point, and you can fire it home for a one-timer. The reason why I think this play works so well is because so many of the player base in this situation, when you're streaking down the boards, would stop up or try to force a pass through the middle, simply because sending it around the boards would usually result in a lost possession the last few NHL games. But because you can actually dump and chase the puck now, you don't have to actually send those passes right through the middle on a hope and prayer when you have nothing else open. Once they apply too much pressure to the puck carrier and you notice that your point man is open, send it over and drop the hammer. Our next play is off of the exact same setup. So when you enter the zone, and there are no real passes to make off the rush, as long as your forward has speed and their defenseman does not, send it around the boards. Now, especially in a game in which you've already tried a lot of D2D one-timers, this can actually open up the slot. And anytime that you notice that their defenseman overcommits into the corner, don't feel the need to just force it back to the point. Take the space and snipe it upstairs. Another play off the cycle, if you're in a situation where your far side winger is on his strong side, so not on his off wing, if you come all the way around the net, this was shown in the gameplay trailer, and hold L2 with the new vision control, you can do this kind of nice rotate, keep your body to the net, and fire it upstairs. It is very easy to defend this, though. Now, one more play that you can do on this type of zone entry when you have no passing options off the rush is to take the space available to you and to fire it for the crashing center or winger by shooting low far side for a rebound. This will either kick out into the corner or right to your crashing forward to hammer home the rebound. Now let's touch on how to actually use the behind the net cycle with your forwards. So for anyone new to the game, essentially what will happen is your three forwards will rotate in almost like a triangle. And what you're trying to do is to get your opponent to chase you on one of those cycles around the net. You want to keep reversing left and right. And eventually, once they overcommit, you'll either be able to walk out in front all alone, or send it right through to the wide open winger on the far side. Another really nice cycle play using behind the net is instead of rotating out in front of the net, if you curl back behind and you go the other direction, you can catch your far side winger in a spot to catch the goaltender before he slides back over. So you can fire it back to the far post, and you can hammer it home before that goalie can get over there. One more really nice play with behind the net is when you send it back to the point and you actually activate that defenseman and bring him into the cycle. When you send it from the half boards to behind the net, watch for that player to then make a beeline right in front to the slot. If you watch for this play, it's really hard for anyone to defend it that isn't actually already watching for it, because he slides right in front of the net and you can send it right in front and hammer it home. Let's talk about a face-off play. If you watch any of my streams, I often say, if you're in the defensive zone, you just can't lose a tie-up draw, because this is what happens. If you are able to tie up your opponent and your winger is on his offhand, which he should be based on your lineup, you can walk right into the middle and fire it low far side or upstairs or really any direction on a goaltender as long as you pick your corner. If you're having a hard time scoring on the breakaway or any time that you get in tight to the goaltender, in NHL 25, you essentially want to do a triple deke. So whether it's forehand or backhand, you want to go backhand, backhand, or forehand, backhand, forehand, and that should be enough in tight on a goaltender to beat him cleanly. Lastly, one of my personal favorites, setting up a clean shot for a tip. If you have all day at the point and you don't have a one-timer available, if you wait, your forward will come in front of the goaltender, and all you've got to do is aim for his stick. Ignore the goaltender and where you're trying to shoot the puck. Aim right for his stick. Even if it doesn't go in cleanly, it usually causes a pretty chaotic rebound. It's not nearly as effective as in years past, but personally, I just find it super fun to pull this shot off. I do quickly want to touch on crash the net. When you can't get any of these plays working with behind the net, that is when I would recommend to just switch to crash the net and start firing shots from everywhere. Crash the net is not nearly as predictable when it comes to behind the net, in my opinion, but it is effective, especially at the higher difficulties, because it's just so much harder to get those open plays. Now let's talk about defense. It's going to be very difficult to give you set plays on defense, and this is really going to depend on your skill level. But what I would recommend, in your own zone, especially when running tight point, you need to get a good understanding of manual player select by holding down the right trigger and aiming the right thumbstick in the direction of the player you are trying to select. Why that is important is because you are trying to select the furthest player away from the puck. That way you can then control him at the point so that you can get those intercepts on the guys just forcing DDD one-timers. If you struggle giving up 2-on-1s or breakaways by overcommitting, here would be my blanket statement until you get a better understanding of how to read the play. When defending the rush, stay inside the face-off dots. One of the best tips I ever got from, in my opinion, one of the best players of NHL, my man Kesso, was he used to always give me crap for going outside the face-off dots when defending the rush, because all it takes is one cut into the middle, and now I've left my other player completely alone. So this won't solve everything, but I guarantee you by playing this a little bit safer, you're going to give up far less 2-on-1s or passes right through the middle simply because your players are not going to be out of position. Next, another way to help out with, again, those players that give up 2-on-1s or breakaways. The second you lose the puck in the offensive zone and you're trying to hold on to a lead and you want to play super safe, if you hold down the right trigger and click in the right thumbstick, you will automatically select the player that is closest to your goaltender. This will work in the defensive zone as well, but I find it to be the most effective when you are trying to defend the rush, especially if you're someone that doesn't really know defensive positionings when defending the rush. You can control your defenseman and make a decision that is going to be a lot more safe. Now, I hope all of these tips, settings, and strategies will help you out in NHL 25. Be sure to look out for my more advanced tutorials when it comes to face-offs, as well as breakouts, power plays, and penalty kills. I've got you covered. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.